All right, troops. Luke, pleasure to have you on the show, my man. How are you getting on?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. A little bit nervous for this one, actually. It's kind of like the reverse, the student becomes the master kind of thing.
Well, we've got to start somewhere, mate. We've got to start somewhere.
We do indeed. And that actually leads me very timely into the first question, because one thing we all have in common, or where we start from, is our origins. And I want to hear, Luke, about your origin story.
My origin story, man. How long you got? How long's the episode?
Well, we'll start with the basics. Where were you born?
So I was born in a little town called Taunton down in Somerset, and for those who don't know, it's cider country, proper Sheppey's original cider. And I spent most of my initial part of my youth till I was about sort of 7 years old, down there. Both my parents sort of from that neck of the woods. So yeah, that's where I spent the initial part of my childhood. And yeah, it was good times for the first sort of 7 or 8 years, and then things started to take a bit of a change. But yeah, it's my origins are of a mixed bag, shall we say? I've me personally, I'll just dive straight into it. I come from a split family. My parents divorced when I was 7, and I don't really remember how I took it, if that makes sense. It was it just happened. But then I remember having like two separate families, if that makes sense. I had like my mum's side, and I had my dad's side, and there was always two of everything, two of every birthday, two of every Christmas, and I saw my dad sort of every other weekend. And that it was a strange time. All my friends around me had married parents, and initially I thought I was lucky. I was getting two Christmases and two birthdays and two Easters and two everything. So I thought
Yeah.
I was lucky. And yeah, for the first sort of few years in my head, it was a normal. It was a normal. I've got a brother and a sister, both younger. I'm the oldest sibling. My brother's 18 months younger than me. My sister is 4 years younger than me. Um, so yeah, it was effectively a single parent with, a single mother with three kids, and yeah, we were a handful. And it was only really as I got a little bit older that I started realizing that things weren't that normal that everyone else was having, if that makes sense. Things that I would say to my friends, or this happened or this happened, and I was getting those funny looks like, what do you mean? um and basically, to sort of cut a long story short, I suffered at the hands of my mother. Now I want to stress that makes it sound like she was the world's worst person. We there was a lot of, I'm going to use the word abuse, and I mean abuse, that was physically and mostly mentally. Violence. Again, I want to stress that it wasn't like it was some sort of like dark horror film, but there was, violence in a sense of I'm not going to say smacked, hit is probably the better word. We all get a smack on the arse when we're younger, and a scalp, as we call it up here. But yeah, it was more and more frequent. It was, and things like groundings. I'd be grounded for weeks at a time. Through school holidays, through even things like Christmases, I was grounded. And a lot of psychological abuse. And I didn't really know any different. I was a young child, and I thought that was the way things were. And it was only really when I hit my teens that things were starting to happen that I thought, no, this isn't right. And I hid a lot. I hid a lot of that away. I didn't really want that to become something that everybody knew about. It was embarrassing. I was, you're at the age where you're starting to discover girls and having a good time, and You know, not saying, oh, by the way, you know, my mum's done this to me again. You know, and I was led down a different path towards my dad. That I was told who apparently who my dad, you know, this person, he doesn't actually want to see you. He only sees you because he has to. He doesn't really love you. He doesn't really care for you. You know, he's only ringing you because he has to. And you know, if it was up to him, he wouldn't see you at all.
Mm.
And these things stick with you as a kid. You know, you believe that all to be true.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, okay, well, if my mother's telling me this, and it must be correct. And I remember you know, when I was young and we used to see my dad and that on the weekend, that I didn't have that connection with him that, excuse me, that I've got with like my kids now. You know, that you know, my eldest is 8, so it was around that same sort of age that I never really felt I felt like he didn't want us there purely because of what I was being told. You know, I won't even say naive because naive is the wrong word. You're young, you know, you believe, you know, you believe what people are telling you, especially those around you who are supposed to be the ones that are trusted with you most. Um, and yeah, you know, it was a very kind of difficult sort of 7 to the age of sort of 15 really was when I eventually left my mum's house and moved into my dad when things had really escalated and come out in the wash, shall we say?
Mm.
You know, and you know, it was only really then that you were able to really start digesting everything that's happened and be able to sort of process that and realize that things weren't right. You know, I was seeing counselors at school. I wasn't performing well in school. I'd given up. I was on that downward slope. I was hanging around with the wrong people. I was doing the wrong things. I was getting into trouble. By this point we'd moved oh, five times, maybe 4 or 5 times, and you know I'd gone to 8 schools in total, including the last one I went to with my dad. So I never really felt settled anywhere. I didn't have a true circle of friends,
Mm.
and I always wanted to fit in. I was never that kid that fitted in well. You know, I was a spotty, skinny teenager, and yeah, you know, I wanted to fit in, and then as you sort of get into your teens, you realize, well, for me, it was where if I end up being if I end up doing these things that I wouldn't encourage anyone to do, I would become cool, I'd become popular, and that was starting to lead me down the wrong path as well. And really, that was kind of when my dad had stepped in. He'd found out by pure chance and luck what was happening to me, and sort of intervened. And him and my stepmom at the time had intervened, and yeah, it was I would probably say the saving grace of my childhood. And then at the age of 15, I moved in with my dad, and I remember it as clear as day. I'd gone to work on that Saturday, and I came home. My my mother and myself had been off and on talking. There'd been other things that had been happening, to which I'm not going to delve into due to just involves other people which I haven't spoken to prior to this to
Yeah.
sort of, you know,
Yeah.
give
Yeah. Of
permissions off on it, and
course.
it's not really relevant. But yeah, you know, there's other things that were happening that had kind of, you know, I remember literally getting back on that Saturday, finished work of my 4 hour shift on £2.50 an hour in the post office.
Oh.
And I got home, my bags were there ready to go. And my dad picked me up a couple of hours later. And the key thing, I remember that day as clear as anything, because the key thing for me was I remember walking out to my dad's car and putting my stuff in that in the boot and turning around, and my mum was not even in the porch. She'd shut the door. She'd completely gone back in the house. And that was like a huge emotional hit. Like, oh, okay, not even a wave goodbye. And
Yeah.
I tried to bottle that emotion driving back you know, it's only like a half an hour drive from Minehead or near Minehead down in Somerset back to Taunton. And yeah, that was a lot of like, okay. And then sort of from there, really, you know, I moved in then with my dad. I was on and off talking to my brother. My sister wasn't really talking to me. Um, she, the you know we could sit and do a whole episode on the actual what happened to me, if you like. You know, not from a
Yeah.
woe is me point of view, but just from an overall, you know, going into situational sort of circumstances. But as yeah, so you know, I had an on-off relationship there, and an on-off relationship with my mum when I have moved in with my dad. And, you know, and full respect to him, he never tried to dismiss me away from her. He just sort of always told me to be careful, always make sure that your eyes are open, and just, you know, he was always there for me if things went, you know, sour with the relationship. And yeah, you know, he was there for me in that sense. But again, moving in with your dad at 15 years old when you've not really spent that much time with him is an awkward relationship. Suddenly he's got his 15-year-old son living with him, and you're living with a man who, you know, you're this person who you've been told so much about your life, which isn't, you know's not true, but you've got a process as to why this person's told you it's not true.
Mm.
And yeah, it was difficult. We didn't really talk. We didn't know how to talk to each other. You know, we did not communicate, but I wouldn't say we didn't have any full in-depth conversations like I would, you know, have with my kids.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, you know, I was always hoping he'd be proud of me without realizing that he was, but he just didn't know how to express it to me.
Mm.
And you know, I completed my last year of school. I got a couple of qualifications, and I wasn't impressed with myself really at that point, because I thought all my friends that I'd made around me were getting A's and B's, and there's me sort of scraping through with qualifications. And it was only when he sort of said to me, "Yeah, but look back to where you were, to being predicted with nothing, and you've come out with something."
Mm.
And he always pushed me. He always pushed me to do, by his own admission, probably better than he did. And you know, wanted it didn't want me to just settle for the average 9 to 5. He wanted to make something for myself. He wanted me to get a career and be the best person that I could be. And I remember him saying it. I don't really care what you're going to be, but make sure you're the best at it. If you're a binman, make sure you're the best binman there can be.
Mm.
And that's nothing against anyone that's a binman. It was just, you know, you know what I mean by it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
it was that type of mentality that he had, like he was trying to instill in you.
yeah, definitely. You know, it was those sort of core values I suppose I've been missing as well. You know, I come from a very, my mother was very materialistic. She cared about an image. She cared about, you know, it was the old saying, I suppose, fur coat and no knickers kind of thing. You know, look at me, but in fact, there's nothing. And that was put into us. You know, it was all about money, really. And we didn't have any, but it was that sort of portraying to other people that around you that you were suddenly you were better than you were, and we, you know, it rubs off. You know, you're
Yeah.
being fed this, and my dad is the complete opposite, an absolute complete opposite. And yeah, at 20 years old, then, you know, I'd worked sort of in retail for a couple of years, and you know that wasn't my calling. And then at 20 years old, I joined the Royal Navy submarine service. So
Mm. Well, tell me
yeah,
about
that was
the tell me about the Royal Navy in particular. Like, guest I was actually interviewed just before you, John Coley. He served in the Navy, but it was over in America, so he was based over in Florida. And he was
yeah,
telling me
yeah,
some of this.
taken out.
He was telling me some of the stories about that, and some of the drills that he was put through, and things like that. So, what was your experience like from the British side of it?
For me, actually, basic training was an absolute walk in the park, because there was, I suppose, if anything, maybe the stuff I had suffered and gone through made, like, you know, basic training was like, sorry, you're going to pay me to be like this. Okay, cool, happy days. And I really enjoyed it. You know, you know, I was always quite a fit lad as a young lad anyway, and it was, you know, a lot of PT, a lot of discipline. You know, times you're being shouted at, and I was like, mate, this is nothing. You want to get shouted at? Go and meet my mother. You know, so for the basic training aspect of it, they mold you, they bring you, and they, you know, they shape you into that person that they want you to be. And yeah, I sort of really enjoyed it. And you know, from the basic training, you move on to your what they call phase two, which for me, I was a ETWE, so a weapons engineer. And that's down in HMS Collingwood, and you do your WE training. And from there, I went on off and did my specialist training up here in Faz Lane, which was for SWS, or the strategic weapons system, the Trident, the nuclear aspect of things, the nuclear weapon aspect of things. And I really loved it. I was proud. I was extremely, extremely proud. And I remember actually getting my what we call a branch badge, which is like you wear in uniform, and it denotes what branch you're in. I
Mm.
remember ringing my dad up when I passed my career course and said, "That's me. I've got it now." And I remember him being so proud, and I was so proud that I'd done it, because that was like that big first leap in the Navy, if you like. You know, I was part of something. I belonged to a branch, and he was so proud. and it was the first. I'm not saying the first time I really saw that, but I kind of
Mm.
saw. I started seeing this other side of him. Um, and then yeah, so from there I then did my SWS training, and from there you join a boat and you do what's called a BSS, which is a basic ship systems or basic submarine systems, which is
Mm.
mostly firefighting and safety. Then you do your BSQ, which is your submarine qualification, where at the end of that, that's when you get your dolphins, and you get awarded them in a shot of rum, tot of rum, catch the dolphins in your teeth. Hoorah, you are a Royal Navy submariner. And that was probably the proudest day of my naval career, being part of that brotherhood, that camaraderie, that to be a submariner,
Mm.
it's a little bit different now. Who can join and how you can join, but then it was, you were in a part of an elite group. Not everybody could be a submariner. You weren't necessarily fit enough or, etc. to be in the submarine service or qualify or be clever enough or however you want to look at it. The entry level was a lot higher in the submarine service, but then, we're going back, 2008-ish, which may not seem like a long time ago, but it feels like it. And
Yeah,
then,
it's the differences as
yeah,
well. Because like when I interviewed John, like he joined when it was Vietnam.
mm,
So like even just like the shifts between like then and like 2008, there would be shifts as well. And how
yeah.
did you do any tours when you were down there?
So for me, for what I did is known as CASD, which is continuous at sea deterrent. So in a nutshell, there's been a Trident V boat or a Trident equipped submarine or a nuclear weapon equipped submarine at sea for the last 65 or so years. Is what's part of the PSA, the Polaris Sales Agreement. So it's been a submarine continuously at sea guarding UK waters, UK shores, ready to. This sounds like a sales pitch. It's not. This is genuinely it. Ready to effectively launch um, a nuclear attack in 15 minutes if required, and that's been a continuous thing. So I was part of that, and it's called Operation Relentless. So we did patrols. I never really on a patrol. You don't go anywhere fancy. You dive. That's it. You don't surface again until you sort of come back. So I didn't go any glamorous places, but I did do what's called a DASO back in 2009, which is a demonstration and shakedown operation, and that's effectively where you launch a missile for testing and training purposes. It's a bit of a hardship. You've got to do it in Florida. I know. I didn't mind. So yeah, I was at Cape Canaveral, Fort Lauderdale, where they sort of effectively launched, spaceships and space shuttles from, and
Mm.
then part of it in Kings Bay, which is in Georgia, just across the border. And that was about sort of 4 or 5 months over there, and that was a really good time. Enjoyed that. That was, as a thing to do in my career, was the highlight of my career to tick that box. Effective for our branch as SWS. The reason it's so important is effectively you do every single procedure that system can throw at you, and it takes 3+ years of work to get there. So to be on that submarine and be part of that launch and be part of that team that fired that missile, and I got my point off the back of it, was a huge achievement.
Mm.
um and from there we went and did something called noise ranging, which is effectively where you reduce the signature of the submarine, and we had to go and do that in the Bahamas. I was landed in the Bahamas for a week and then subsequently got banned from the Bahamas for life.
Well,
And that's all
well,
I'm saying on
yeah.
that.
Well, don't worry. I will not push you any further on that one, my friend. Like the fact you're telling me what you're telling me, like I'm really privileged and honored. Like I said the same to John. Like hearing these stories like from a civilian's point of view, it's the stuff you don't hear. Like you only see, the glamorized versions in movies and all this stuff. Like with John, it was comparing it to Red October, like where he actually had a tale about Red October, which tied in. Like, but we're seeing it
Yeah,
from that side. We're not seeing like the day-to-day stuff, the stuff that you guys go through, like, and it's massive respect and props from, especially from my book and many others. So how
I
long
would
did you
say
serve?
probably. Say again, sorry.
How long did you serve?
So I did about 11 years. I was medically discharged in 2017. I was actually medically discharged due to my mental health. Um, was the reason that I left. I effectively had a nervous breakdown. And yeah, that led to my sort of, a demise and ultimately leaving the submarine service and leaving the Navy altogether.
Hmm. Like, when you went from, obviously, like, from the Navy, like, how we know each other, like, for anybody that is curious, is like, how do I know two guys that have both been in the Navy in completely different spectrums? Like, well, they're like buses, they just all turn up at once. One I know through acting, and yourself, like, I know through like the support group that we go to, Andy's Man Club. And we spoke about this before in a previous episode where I had one of the representatives at the studio. But how did you get involved with Andy's Man Club?
So really, I'll go back actually to when I left the Navy, and it will all tie in.
Yeah.
So long, I'd suffered with my mental health. Again, this ties in even into my childhood. I'd suffered with mental health for most of my life effectively. Never really knew until I was kind of it only really sort of came about when I joined the Navy. Sort of a few years in, I was with my ex, who was not a nice person really at all, and that had this toll on my mental health. Um, I sought help for it, and I thought I dealt with it, but ultimately, what I had done is told my CPN what she wanted to hear to make me medically fit again to join the boat. Because in my head, I felt like I was letting down the lads on board. I was going to be spoken about. It was going to be, oh, they're going to be not a sick chit, not wanting to go to sea. So that sort of played heavily on me because of the mentality of what the military, is like. I'm not going to shy away from it. There is that sort of legacy mentality there. And so I didn't really deal with my demons. I'd kind of scratched the surface enough to kind of I knew I had issues, but I didn't want to delve there. I didn't want to go there. I wasn't ready for it. I lied to myself and I lied to my CPN. And then a few years later, I had tried to take my own life 2 days before Christmas, 2000, and I think it was 10. Just purely because I couldn't take any more from her. I couldn't take any more of the drinking, of the abuse, of all of this, and I just thought, sod it. So that kind of led to me sort of seeking help, and then move on a few years, and I'm now my now wife. When our eldest was born, he spent sort of like 9 weeks in intensive care, and I'd already kind of, I wasn't feeling great anyway. There was other things going on, and it was like I need to sort of seek help here. And seeing your son, and I just want to clarify, he's perfectly fine. This isn't there is no sad ending to this from his point of view. He's an absolutely thriving 8 year old about to turn 9. But back then, we didn't know that. We were told to prepare for the worst. And that plays heavy on you, and it plays heavy on your marriage. It plays heavy on your mental health. You don't have you don't sort of prepare to have children to have to go through that. And all these things have just sort of added up, and then everything over the years has sort of like boiled up. And yeah, I effectively took a nervous breakdown, and it landed me in hospital. I was voluntary sectioned. The difference between voluntary section and sectioned is they ask you if you want to go in, and if you say no, you're going in. So, I was in hospital for five and a bit weeks. Um, and yeah, I remember being in the hospital and sitting in the ward, looking down the aisle, thinking, "This is it. I'm never putting on a uniform again. I know my career's over now." Um, and yeah, it was then leaving the Navy and then into Civvy Street where like the next bout of problems started. You're institutionalized in the military, and then suddenly you're in Civvy Street where it's a completely different way of working, and I didn't adapt to it. I struggled, and you only get the help for so long once you leave the military. Then you're with the NHS, and this is not. I am not slagging off the NHS by any stretch. It's a completely different level. With the Navy, I was getting help sometimes 3-4 times a week.
Yeah.
NHS is, understaffed and overrun.
Mm.
It's completely different, and I was sort of getting help, but nowhere near the same sort of level. And as time had progressed, I realized that I still needed something, but it wasn't that psychiatry. It wasn't that assessment. It wasn't that clinicalness. I just needed something, and I couldn't quite put my fingers on what that was. And a few years had gone by, and I'd sort of contacted them again and sort of said, "Look, I'm still feeling it. I'm not feeling down. I just feel like I need something. I just want to talk to somebody." And they assigned me a CPN, a lovely guy. I'm not going to say his name.
Yeah.
It's not fair on him, but if he does happen to watch this, you know who you are. And he just used to come around and talk to me, and that's all it was. We just used to have a chat. There was no medication involved. There's no uppage of this, or I think you should do this. It was just a chat. And he'd mentioned to me about Andy's Man Club, and sort of said, look, I've done a bit of looking and I found this, and I think it would be good for you. So I was like, okay, so we're going back maybe 4 years.
Mm.
And I remember looking at the time, and there wasn't one that close to me. And then the thought of going to one of these things, not knowing what was really going to be about, the the stress of driving to somewhere where I wasn't sure where I was going,
Mm.
it kind of put me off a little bit. And I just I'd never really forgotten about it, but it just kind of sat there as that thing in my mind. And yeah, I started. By this point I was volunteering as well with SAFA, the Armed
Mm.
Forces charity, and I was doing things like the Poppy Appeal and like Armed Forces Day and this, and supporting veterans. And that was a huge. It's still a huge part of my life. We've got the Poppy Appeal coming up, and I realized that suddenly when people were talking to you and you were able to share your story and listen to their story, and not you weren't giving people advice, you were just saying this is what you did when you left, and this is how I cope with it, and what I've done. And I found it quite sort of therapeutic in itself to me. And I sort of said to my wife at the time, I said, look, I said, where we live is crying out for like a form of mental health, kind of sit down talking, no no kind of medical agenda to it, just a sit down chat, talk about chew the fat kind of thing.
Mhm.
And yeah, sort of I ran with the idea. I looked at doing different things. My wife had a business and it was the perfect premises to do it out of. We could have done it there. And I did a couple of sessions. I used to have exotic animals. And I used to use the animals as a way of sort of a talking point. I used to do sessions where you do that and you would be able to break down barriers a little bit, and through sort of seeing the animals, people would talk and people would open up. And by pure chance in my last job, I went for a medical, and the guy, the occupational health medical person, as I walked in the room, said, "What are you, ex-military or ex-police?" I was like, "Whoa, okay." Thought that's a bit presumptuous. And I said, ex-military, why? And he just handed me this card, and I looked at it, and it was an Andy's Man Club card. He said, put that in your wallet and look at it in your own time. And I did. And I looked at it about a week later, Googled, and the club that I now go to was opening about a week after that. So yeah, and I've never looked back. I won't say it saved my life, but it's definitely changed my life. It's given me, it's that I was searching for a long time. It's a
Mm.
staple part of my week, and it's something that I thoroughly enjoy and look forward to, and hopefully can give a little bit back.
Yeah. Well, and definitely when I first came to Andy's Man Club, a lot of the followers know that I go now, and like I was in the same kind of boat as you, like when you first looked into it. Like I knew the kill, like the area, like the Kilsyth area, like because
Mm.
like my best friend stays there, but I didn't know whereabouts that was, going on my own as well. And I remember phoning my wife at the time, and she was like, I am 50-50 about whether you're going to do this or not. What I don't know if you're going to do this, because I know how scared you are. And I was bloody terrified. And I remember pulling up, and I was just like breathing, just trying to breathe, just to get that courage, just to open the car door. And then when I
Yeah.
came out, and you were the first person that I saw, and I instantly just felt like that tension of going somewhere and you're not sure, it just dropped instantly. Because it was just
Well,
like, it was like,
I
right,
think that's a
sweet.
compliment.
No, it is like definitely, because like there was so many things inside me that were saying, run, get to,
Yeah.
just go, you can't do this. Like, and then the second I saw it was like the guard kind of went down. I was like, right. And the second you just seen the hand come out, I was like, right, let's go for it. And the first thing you said, look, like the hardest thing you'll be able to do is walk through that door. And I did it, and everybody was so welcoming. Again, it's part of my routine now. I look forward to the Mondays, and being part of this, the group with you, has helped me so much. Personally,
Oh, good.
I want to say thank you to you and all the guys that go at the club, because we all need it in one way or the other. And it's really helped me, and helped me get myself together, and help myself what through my own struggles, as you know, and as like my viewers know. So
Yeah.
they've I've spoke several times about, the club's helped me. And this is the guy who has gave me that confidence to finally get myself back up. So for one more, I was wanting on, because obviously I want to promote Andy's Man Club and get a bit more promotion for it, but I also wanted to have this one-to-one with you and say, like, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome, man.
Because there's many guys that feel the same way. And yeah, I really appreciate it.
You're making me blush.
Yeah, well, in fairness, it's getting colder now. We need to get a bit warmer, don't we?
Aye. No, and I'm glad. It's like I say, it's something it's just very close to my heart. It's, if anyone that's seen my car knows, I've got a plaster over the back of my car. I ironically just put my hoodie in the wash, so that's why I've not got my Andy's Man Club hoodie on. I should get something in the back of the cabin, shouldn't I, on the wall there?
Yeah.
Just get something up there.
Next time we do something like this, we'll get like the background that I've got now. We'll get that put for you, so you can change it to the Andy's Man Club at the back.
Yeah, we'll do that. As long as you can do it for me, because I'll end up like switching off or pressing the wrong button.
What's the point
But,
knowing a
no,
guy that runs a media company if he can't teach you how to do it?
Well, it's good because my son now, I'm at that age where my son tells me more about how to do things than I'm the one that controls the Wi-Fi though. So if he gets mouthy, I just turn it off. And then I realize I got to talk to my wife to do that, so I quickly turn it back on again. But yeah,
and especially with
I'm
the recent sports that were on, like the F1 and the rugby, obviously we won't mention that too much. But when the sports were on and the NFL on ITV, you're like, okay, I can't switch this off now. I need to catch up with this.
Yeah. No, but I'm glad, because like Andy's Man Club, yeah, I make no bones about it, and I don't apologize for how often I talk about it and where I mention it. And for me, it's because I know it works. I know the concept works. I believe in it. And you see real results. There's no personal gain out of it, in a sense. You're not there to promote anything apart from men's mental health. And I'm a big keen, sort of advocate for mental health awareness in general, but specifically men's mental health. Coming from a military background, and even now with what I do in the defense sector, it's quite a still male orientated environment. A lot of ex-military personnel, we don't talk. We just, men don't in general. We say, how you doing? Yeah, I'm all right. And that's kind of it. And so many people that I've spoken to and I meet, that you say that and then you go, yeah, but are you? And once you can break down an initial barrier of conversation, the conversation will flow. And it's amazing what people are actually going through. I've got all my socials are all about sort of positivity from specifically, that I believe in a half glass full mindset. I've not always been that way. I used to be the world's most pessimistic person. I was always negative, always glass half empty. This is always going to get worse. I can't see it getting any better. That was the way that I looked at everything. And it really was down to my immediate family, my wife, my especially, and then my family as such, would really sort of, I would sit and talk to. My dad, my dad is now one of my best friends. I'll talk to him all the time. I ring him, well, sometimes 2-3 times a week, other times, every sort of, usually at least once a week, that we'll get in contact some way or another. And my auntie, my late auntie, who was a huge part of my life and someone that I admired and respected, both her and my uncle, who immensely. He's a very dominant figure in the automotive world, and someone that I respect, to the hills. He talks, I listen. And my auntie she was more of a mother figure in my life, to be honest. And I will say that my mother actually was, and I'm not going to apologize for that. She was there from sort of being knee high to a grasshopper. My first memory of her was being, was being page boy at their wedding, and it's all been positive memories. And she was that person that I would turn to when I needed that maternal side of things, and she would always have something positive to say. She was negative. She was always, she was always honest. She was always open, and she always managed to have to bring, even when I was feeling down, and when I was, the old version of me, if you like, would always manage to find ways of bringing me out of that. And yeah, it's sort of from then and from her sort of, I don't want to say teachings. It sounds a bit, kind of cultish, but
Mm.
from her, for me listening to her and over the years and taking that advice from all my family, that you realize, hang on a minute, I got my mindset into that position of, do you know what? There is always a glass half full in something. It's not always easy to see, and it's not always obvious, but there is always a glass half full to every situation. It's
Mm.
very easy for us as people to see the negatives. That's the easy option.
Mm.
And, like you've heard me say it, a small positive is better than a huge negative.
Yep.
And it's not that, the negative's the easy one to see, like, I don't know, I've crashed my car, right? I've crashed my car. That's it. My car's written off. Bump. I got to deal with insurance. Got to buy a new car. Right. There's the easy negative. The positive,
Mm.
it's the old one. It's bit of metal. It can be replaced. At least you're not hurt, but you don't see it at the time
Yeah.
because you focus on the negative. When actually, if you do focus on the positive and go, do you know what? Right. Yeah, it's happened. I can't change that, but at least I'm not hurt, or no one's been injured, and that's the way that I try and assess and look at everything. And don't believe me, it's still not always easy for me. I'm not some weird kind of guru, kind of tree huggy and living off that kind of thing. I still get angry, I still get annoyed, I
Mm.
still enjoy a beer. I vape. I'm not a perfect person, far from it. I don't believe anybody is, but it's how you deal. When I get annoyed, it's how I deal with that. I've got
Mm-hmm.
two options. I can carry it on. I can carry on that argument. I can carry on that frustration. I can say something stupid which I'm instantly going to regret, or I go, right, okay, I'm just going to shut up here now and let's ride this out. Maybe the argument I've had with somebody needs 10 minutes to cool down. And
Mm.
it's appreciating people, is I think we do often overlook important people in our lives, whoever that may be, your partner, your wife, your husband, your family, that you always expect to be there. And then we don't always sort of say thank you, I think, when we need to.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's one of those things that I'm very keen on doing. I'll my wife obviously is a is a huge part of my life, in a sense that she's been my absolute rock over the years.
Yeah.
She's been there when many people, many other people would have given up, many other partners would have given up, and she's stuck by it through the illnesses, through the losses, through the heartache, shit times. She's been that strong one when,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't, people say, oh, it should be no, she was a strong one when I failed, when I
Yeah.
collapsed, when I had my issues, and I didn't always give her that time the other way around when she was then dealing with what she'd seen and gone through because of me.
Mm.
So yeah, it's that appreciation for those people.
Yeah,
And
definitely. Well, and I think because we are coming up on time, normally I would ask about the one piece of advice that you would give for anybody struggling, but you've covered it. Live it like the glass half full method. And appreciate what the others do for you and what they've got for you. You basically answered the question without me having to actually answer it, which works because we are running on time. But look, personally, from the bottom of my
yeah,
heart, I want to say it's been a pleasure to get to know you, and I want to keep getting to know you more. Thank you so much for coming on. Every link that I can
yeah,
find for Andy's Man Club will be in the description of this video. Guys, it's so important. Reach out to us. And
in the
Ivan Andrew
description.
Durnan.
I get the point.
Yep, they
I
will
get
be
to do
in.
that thing in the
Yep,
description below.
you get to point. You did the pointing.
Yeah.
There we go. Until next time,
There you go.
everybody. I have been Andrew Durnan. This has been the
Okay.
amazing Luke Rooker. Till next time, take care. Stay safe.
Cheers, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.